Somewhere between your grandfather's generation and yours, something went missing. No secret formula and no hidden supplement. Just a set of everyday habits that used to make ordinary American men strong. A century ago, men chopped wood before breakfast, walked miles to work, slept on firm surfaces, and ate foods that barely exist on supermarket shelves today. Then, piece by piece, those habits disappeared. Some were regulated out. Others were crowded out by convenience. 20 of them are worth knowing. We are counting down from 20 to 1, ending on the one nobody wants to say out loud. Nobody really noticed these changes while they were happening. They unfolded across decades, one small shift at a time. A school board cuts recess. A neighborhood farm sells to a developer. A boxed cereal replaces a breakfast of eggs, bacon, and cream. Each change looked minor on its own. Stacked together, they are the quiet reason the average 40-year-old today cannot do what his great-grandfather could do at 60. Let's start with the one that sounds too simple to matter. Number 20. Real everyday walking in the mile-after-mile sense. In the year 1900, the typical American walked between 5 and 10 miles a day without thinking about it. Walking was how you got to work, how you got to church, how you carried ice blocks home from the ice house. Your calves, knees, hips, and lower back adapted to that load every single day. The interstate highway system, signed into law in 1956 by President Eisenhower, transformed the entire geography of American life. Suburbs exploded. Cars became standard. Walking collapsed into a hobby instead of a default. By the early 2000s, the average American adult was clocking around 3,000 steps a day, roughly a mile and a half. That is the loss of a foundational movement pattern that used to come for free. Number 19. Sleeping on the floor or something close to it. Most men in the early 20th century slept on straw ticks, horsehair pads, or thin cotton futons, not pillow-top mattresses. In rural American farmhouses, children and sometimes adults slept directly on wooden floors with a wool blanket. The effect on posture, spine alignment, and hip mobility was not accidental. Firm surfaces forced the body to organize itself around gravity. Dr. Michael Tetley, a British physiotherapist who lived among indigenous populations in the 1970s and 80s, documented what he called natural resting postures across more than 50 cultures. In every one, rates of chronic lower back pain were dramatically lower than in modern mattress-using societies. Number 18. The morning cold wash. Before indoor plumbing and electric water heaters became standard, nearly every American man started his day by splashing cold water on his face and chest from a wash basin or a well pump. In Minnesota or Maine, that meant genuinely cold water. Research from Scandinavian institutions in the last 15 years suggests what old farmers had figured out by accident. Repeated cold exposure increases brown fat activity, sharpens alertness, and supports hormonal balance. The cold plunge trend that went viral on social media around 2019 was a rediscovery of the least romantic part of a working man's morning. Number 17. Isometric strength. In 1914, a Russian-born strongman named Alexander Zas was captured by Austrian forces and thrown into a prisoner of war camp for the duration of the First World War. With no barbells and no equipment, he trained by pressing against his chains and the iron bars of his cell. He called it isometric training. When Zas escaped and rebuilt his strongman career across European theaters, he was reportedly able to bend metal bars and lift a piano overhead, Isometrics found their way into American physical culture in the 1950s, championed by Bob Hoffman at the York Barbell Company in Pennsylvania. Then, Nautilus machines and commercial gym chains in the 1970s pushed them to the margins. They still work. They still build joint strength and tendon resilience in ways dumbbells alone cannot. Number 16. Thick handle grip training. Every axe handle, every shovel, every sledgehammer, and every horse rein in pre-industrial America was thicker than any modern gym implement. Men who worked with tools all day had hands like vices, without ever thinking about grip training. Eugen Sandow, the father of modern bodybuilding, insisted on thick-handled dumbbells for his students as early as 1897. That tradition survived in blue-collar trades well into the 1960s. As manufacturing shifted overseas and desk jobs replaced physical trades, grip strength collapsed across a generation. A 2016 study by Elizabeth Fain in the Journal of Hand Therapy found that young American men had grip strength substantially weaker than their grandfathers did at the same age. And no, that study was real. It caused a small panic in the occupational therapy world. Number 15. Tumbling and hand balancing. Until the 1970s, basic tumbling was a standard part of American physical education classes. Boys learned forward rolls, cartwheels, handstands, and basic vaulting as a matter of course. YMCA centers, Boy Scout troops, and military basic training reinforced the same skills. Hand balancing was a feature attraction on vaudeville stages and in circus tents, and many ordinary men could hold a freestanding handstand for 20 or 30 seconds. Then, two things shifted. Public schools began cutting physical education funding in the late 1970s. Liability concerns from school insurance carriers quietly pulled gymnastics equipment out of American gymnasiums. Tumbling vanished from the budget sheets. The kids never stopped wanting to climb upside down. Number 14. ODD object lifting. Before dumbbells came in neat, rubber-coated pairs, men lifted things that were awkward, heavy, and unbalanced. Stones, logs, kegs, anvils, and sandbags. The Dinnie stones in Scotland, weighing roughly 733 pounds combined, have been lifted by working farmers for nearly 2 centuries. In the American Midwest, stonemasons and field hands hoisted massive field stones as tests of strength at barn raisings and county fairs. The barbell revolution of the early 1900s, led by the York Barbell Company in Pennsylvania, standardized iron training and made strength measurable. Something was lost in that translation. Balanced iron is predictable. Real-world weight never is. Number 13. Climbing trees, ropes, walls, and hillsides. Every boy in 1930 climbed things: haylofts, barn rafters, boulders, and fences. Rope climbing was tested on the President's Physical Fitness Test from 1966 until the test was replaced in 2013. By the late 2000s, child development surveys found that many American children had never climbed a tree. Climbing builds grip, shoulder stability, core tension, and spatial awareness in ways no leg press can replicate. And it is one of the cheapest things to do on Earth. All it requires is a tree and a willingness to risk a scraped knee. All right, let's keep climbing because the next 7 cut into territory most modern men have never stepped into. Number 12. Indian club swinging. In the 1800s, nearly every American soldier trained with Indian clubs. The United States Military Academy at West Point issued them to cadets. Physical culture manuals sold them by the millions across Boston, Philadelphia, and Chicago. The clubs were shaped like bowling pins, and they were swung in intricate patterns that built shoulder mobility, rotator cuff health, and timing. In the 1920s, the United States Army quietly dropped them from standard training in favor of dumbbells, which were easier to mass produce. Within a generation, the knowledge of how to use them had nearly vanished. It survived in small pockets of martial artists and physical therapists. In the last decade, a handful of American coaches, notably Dr. Ed Thomas, have been bringing them back. Persian wrestlers called Pehlwans have trained with weighted maces or meals for at least 1,000 years. British colonial soldiers stationed in India adopted the tools in the late 1800s and brought them back to England. From there, they crossed the Atlantic and became part of turn-of-the-century American strongman routines. The steel mace, with its offset load, forces the shoulders, core, and wrists to work in 3 dimensions at once. That kind of rotational, asymmetric loading is almost impossible to replicate with a barbell. The mace faded in America after the Second World War, when the military adopted standardized equipment for mass production. It is starting to return, though it remains a niche practice. Number 10. The deep resting squat. In almost every pre-industrial culture, men rested in a deep squat. Heels flat, knees bent completely, back upright. Ask someone in rural Vietnam, Ethiopia, or Bolivia to wait for a bus, and they will drop into this position without thinking. Americans born before 1940 could generally do the same. That deep squat was a natural posture. Chairs did not dominate most American homes until the mass production boom of the 1950s. After that, chairs became the default resting posture, and hip mobility collapsed across an entire generation. A 2019 study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that sitting in chairs more than 6 hours a day measurably increased all-cause mortality, independent of formal exercise habits. The deep squat was maintenance, a resting posture that kept the hips open for life. Most men today cannot hold it for 30 seconds. Number 9. Breath and lung training. The physical culture manuals printed between 1900 and 1930 almost all included a section on breathing. Bernard McFadden, the founder of Physical Culture magazine and one of the most influential health writers in American history, published entire books on the subject. The idea was that diaphragmatic breathing, combined with deliberate breath holds and controlled exhalations, improved endurance, digestion, and mental clarity. Modern research on figures like Wim Hof has validated much of what those early American writers claimed. But the connection to the older homegrown tradition is rarely made. Around the 1960s, breath training dropped out of mainstream American physical culture. It survived in yoga studios and martial arts dojos. The homegrown lineage went quiet. If any of this is landing for you, hit subscribe. I cover lost history, forgotten skills, and the slow changes that shaped American life every week. None of what we have covered so far is secret. It was the baseline of American life a century ago. Human biology did not change. The environment men lived in did, along with the food they ate, the work they did, and the institutions that shaped their days. The next 8 items cut closer to the bone because they touch on food, hormones, and the federal policies that reshape both. Number 8. Organ meats, especially liver. Through the 1940s, beef liver was one of the most prestigious cuts of meat on the American dinner table. Doctors prescribed it routinely for anemia, fatigue, and what was called general debility. One serving of beef liver contains roughly 10 times the vitamin A, 15 times the vitamin B12, and several times the iron of a comparable cut of steak. In 1934, George Minot and William Murphy won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for showing that raw liver cured pernicious anemia. Every man in their generation knew that liver built you up. Then the rise of factory farming after the Second World War made most supermarket liver less appealing. A generation of children grew up refusing it. By the 1980s, per capita organ meat consumption in America had collapsed. Number 7. Raw, whole, grass-fed milk. Until the 1940s, most American families drank raw milk straight from local farms. The milk was high in fat, rich in fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and K, and contained natural enzymes that aided digestion. Pasteurization, introduced to fight bovine tuberculosis and brucellosis, saved lives. Nobody serious disputes that. But the broader shift from raw, whole, grass-fed milk to skim, homogenized grain-fed milk was driven as much by shelf-life economics as by safety science. In 1987, the FDA banned the interstate sale of raw milk entirely. Whatever you think of that call, it changed what ended up on American breakfast tables. The nutrient profile of a glass of 1925 whole milk was simply different from a glass of 2025 skim. That is chemistry, not opinion. Number 6. Animal fats at the center of the plate. For most of American history, butter, lard, tallow, and bacon grease sat at the center of the American plate as dietary staples. Every farm kitchen kept them rendered in a jar by the stove. In 1977, Senator George McGovern's Senate Select Committee on Nutrition released its famous Dietary Goals report, recommending Americans reduce saturated fat consumption. The food pyramid followed in 1992, pushing grains to the base and meats to a small upper section. Margarine, industrial vegetable oils, and low fat, everything replaced the traditional fats on American dinner plates. The research that drove those recommendations, particularly Ansel Keys' 7-country study, has been re-examined and sharply criticized in the last 20 years. Scientific consensus has quietly shifted. Cultural habits have not caught up. Number 5. The bent press. Arthur Saxon, a German-born strongman who toured America in the early 1900s, held the recognized world record for the bent press at roughly 370 pounds. The lift involves cleaning a heavy dumbbell or kettlebell to the shoulder, then slowly bending the torso sideways and downward while extending the arm overhead until the weight is locked out. It is a whole-body strength expression, requiring oblique strength, shoulder mobility, hip stability, and focus. Saxon's record stood for most of the 20th century. The bent press fell out of favor by the 1950s, partly because it was considered too dangerous for casual lifters, and partly because modern powerlifting federations did not include it in their standardized events. When a lift stops being measured, people stop doing it. Number 4. Wrestling and rough play. In 1920, nearly every American boy wrestled at school recess, in backyards, at YMCAs, and at county fairs. Greco-Roman and catch-as-catch can wrestling were standard athletic offerings through high school. The physical intelligence built by grappling, knowing how to control your body under another body's weight, how to fall without injury, how to generate force from the hips, cannot be built from machines. Across the last 50 years, liability concerns, changes in school policy, and a cultural shift away from physical contact pushed wrestling to the margins of boyhood. Today, according to the National Federation of State High School Associations, only a small fraction of American boys wrestle competitively. Half a century ago, the number was several times higher. Number 3. Eugen Sandau's full-body tension system. Eugen Sandow, a Prussian-born strongman who toured America in the 1890s and became the headliner of Florenz Ziegfeld's early shows in Chicago, was arguably the first modern bodybuilder. His training system combined light dumbbells, dynamic tension, and full-body coordination drills that could be done in a bedroom in 15 minutes a day. By the early 1900s, his home training manuals had sold more than 1 million copies in the United States. Ordinary men, clerks, farmers, and mechanics followed his program and built visible, functional muscle without ever setting foot in a gym. When commercial gym chains exploded in the 1970s, the Sando method was dismissed as old-fashioned. It has always worked. It just does not require a monthly membership fee. Number 2. The Farmer's Walk. The Farmer's Walk is exactly what it sounds like. Pick up something heavy in each hand and walk with it as far as you can. American farmers did this every day, moving grain buckets, ice blocks, milk cans, firewood, and water. Professor Stuart McGill at the University of Waterloo, one of the world's most cited spine biomechanics researchers, has called the Farmer's Walk one of the most underrated total body exercises in existence. It trains grip, traps, obliques, forearms, posture, and gait all at once. Commercial gyms ignored it for most of the 20th century because it was not glamorous. Strongman competitions kept it alive. It is one of the most valuable movements a modern man can reintroduce into his life. Number 1, and the one that ties everything else together. The combination of heavy compound lifting and a whole food, animal-based diet. In the 1940s and 50s, a man who wanted to get strong in America walked into a York barbell gym in Pennsylvania, picked up a heavy barbell, and did a handful of compound lifts. Squats, deadlifts, overhead presses, rows, and standing cleans. He ate eggs and bacon for breakfast, meat and potatoes for lunch, and organ meats or a roast for dinner. He drank whole milk. He slept 9 hours because there were no phones and no streaming services. He moved all day at his job. He rested hard on Sunday. That was the entire formula. No seed oils, no artificial protein powders, no heart rate zones. Just real food, heavy iron, and a physical life. Then the 1970s delivered 4 big shifts at once. The McGovern Report in 1977 steered Americans toward grains and away from animal fats. Federal subsidies for corn, soy, and wheat made processed food cheaper than whole food. The personal computer, launched by IBM in 1981, accelerated the office economy and replaced physical labor with sedentary work. And commercial gym chains sold Americans the idea that fitness was a separate activity, purchased with a membership, rather than something woven into daily life. No single policy buried these habits. A stack of them across 30 years did the job without anyone needing to conspire. None of the 20 items on this list are actually secret. Every one of them is sitting in a public domain physical culture book, an old USDA nutrition document, or a Boy Scouts handbook from 1945. Farmers' walks are on YouTube. Indian clubs are on Amazon. Raw milk is legal in roughly half of the American states. Organ meats are in every grocery store. The knowledge is still there. What went missing was the chain of handing it down from one generation to the next. That is the quiet story of the last 70 years. Not a grand conspiracy, just an accumulation. A cereal box replaced a breakfast. An office chair replaced a plow. A gym membership replaced a trade that used to move from father to son without anyone writing it down. The question is not really whether the government or the food industry or convenience culture did this on purpose. The question is what any of us decide to do now, knowing what used to be normal. The habits are easy enough. Walk more. Drop into a squat when you rest. Carry something heavy in each hand for 100 yards. Eat liver once a week. Sleep on a firmer surface. Swing a mace in the backyard. None of it requires a gym. Most of it requires nothing but willingness. Everything your grandfather's generation knew is still available. It just waits for someone to pick it up again. If this one landed for you, there is a video on screen now about the forgotten American breakfast and why it mattered more than most people realize. Subscribe so the next one finds you. We post every week and we dig through archives most channels skip.